Elias Blackwood leaned his brow against the sturdy glass of the International Space Station's observation platform. He watched as Earth spun beneath him, a vibrant sphere of blue and white. The sight, which had once filled him with a sense of wonder, now served as a reminder of his own perceived stagnation. It was just another day of translating agricultural data. "Another exciting day of space travel, I see," remarked Clara Hayes, her voice tinged with amusement, as she floated into the observation module. Elias straightened up, running a hand through his dark hair. "Indeed," he replied, "nothing screams space adventure quite like documenting corn production." "At least you get to work with the Xylar," he continued. "Their tentacles are somewhat endearing, when they are not inadvertently knocking my coffee everywhere." He shifted his gaze towards his colleague. "I thought that my position as cultural liaison would be a tad more captivating and exciting." Clara raised an eyebrow, "Like those first contact novels you're always engrossed in." "I was going to say are meaningful," Elias countered, gesturing toward the vast cosmos beyond the window. "We've established contact with 3 separate species within the last decade, and here I am, bogged down in reports on grain yields." Just then, the station's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, mandatory briefing in Module C7 in 15 minutes. Clara propelled herself off the wall. "Probably another update on proper tentacle protocol," she quipped. They made their way through the station's corridors, navigating the zero-gravity environment with practiced ease. The briefing room was already packed when they arrived, populated by the station's multinational crew and a small number of alien guests. Director Hayes stood at the front, her usually stern expression replaced by something that resembled excitement. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored non-terrestrial colleagues, I have remarkable news," she announced. "The Zenith High Council has approved Earth's request for a cultural exchange program." A murmur of anticipation rippled through the room. Elias leaned forward in his seat, the Zenith being the most recently discovered and also most mysterious species. "They've agreed to host a small delegation of Earth representatives for a 6-month cultural immersion program," Director Hayes continued. "We're seeking candidates with strong diplomatic skills and proven cultural sensitivity." Elias' heart pounded in his chest. This was his chance to do something significant. The application process was grueling, consisting of 3 weeks of interviews, psychological assessments, and tests of cultural awareness. Elias had dedicated his free time to studying all the available information about the Sinar culture, which was scant. Most of Earth's knowledge came from short diplomatic exchanges. When the final selection meeting arrived, Elias sat across from a panel of senior officials, including Director Hayes. "Mr. Blackwood," a stern-faced man said, consulting his tablet, "your test scores are remarkable, but we are somewhat troubled by some of your responses. When questioned about the potential risks of close contact with the Sinar, you showed surprisingly little concern about their empathic capabilities." Elias met his gaze respectfully. "Sir, I believe that our fear of their emotional abilities has limited our understanding." He added, "Yes, they can perceive and influence emotions, but they have never demonstrated hostility. How can we build trust if we are constantly in fear?" "An idealistic view," Director Hayes noted, but there was a hint of approval in her tone. 2 days later, Elias received his acceptance letter. He was going to Sinus. The voyage lasted 3 weeks aboard a Sinar transport vessel. When they finally emerged from faster-than-light travel, Elias's first view of Sinus was breathtaking. The planet glowed with an internal light, its atmosphere shimmering with aurora-like patterns. However, it was the cities that captured his attention, massive structures that seemed to float in the air, connected by bridges of pure energy that pulsed with iridescent colors. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Dr. Vargas, another delegate, joined him at the viewport. "Though I would advise keeping your distance from those famous twins, if I were you. The last Earth diplomat who got too close to them had to be sedated." Elias frowned. "The Sinar princesses, Lyra and NYX, aren't actually princesses, they are cultural ambassadors, but their empathic abilities are off the charts, even for Sinar." Part 3. The welcoming ceremony was held in a massive chamber, its walls appearing to breathe, shifting in color to match the emotions of those present. Elias stood with the other Earth delegates, watching as Sinar officials glided into the room. Then, the twins entered. They moved in perfect synchronicity, their 8-foot frames graceful despite their height. Their skin was a deep azure, adorned with patterns that seemed to shimmer. Their features were delicate, almost ethereal, with eyes that possessed ancient wisdom. Elias noticed the other delegate subtly stepping back, but he stood his ground, fascinated by the way the twins moved, how they seemed to communicate without words or gestures. Later that evening, during the cultural showcase, Elias watched as Lyra and NYX performed a traditional dance. Their movements created patterns of light in the air, telling a story of stars being born and dying. While others kept a respectful distance, Elias found himself drawn closer. The twins' dance became more intricate, more passionate. Then, as if sensing his presence, they turned in perfect unison. Their eyes met his, a jolt of emotion hitting him like a physical force. Wonder, curiosity, and something else, something that made his heart race and his skin tingle. For a moment, just a moment, he felt what they felt, saw what they saw. The connection broke as quickly as it had formed, leaving Elias gasping for breath. The twins exchanged a look that seemed to hold volumes of unspoken communication. "You felt it, didn't you?" Dr. Vargas whispered from behind him. "That's why we keep our distance. Once they're in your head, there's no turning back." But Elias barely heard him. He was still watching the twins, and they were watching him. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that his life would never be the same. As the ceremony concluded, Lyra and NYX approached him directly, their movements still perfectly synchronized. The other delegates scattered, leaving Elias standing alone. "You did not retreat," Lyra spoke, her voice melodic. "Most humans fear what they cannot understand," NYX added, completing her sister's thought. Elias straightened up, meeting their iridescent eyes. "I've always believed that understanding comes from moving closer, not backing away." The twins shared another of their mysterious looks. Then, in perfect unison, they smiled. "Perhaps," they said together, "you are exactly what we've been waiting for." The twins circled Elias with liquid grace, their height making him feel delightfully small in comparison. Their proximity sent subtle waves of warmth through his body, like standing near an exotic heat source. "Tell us," Elias Blackwood, Lyra spoke, her accent making his name sound like music, "what draws you so boldly toward what others flee?" "I've read every report about your species," he replied, maintaining his composure despite their mesmerizing presence. None of them mentioned anything about the Sinar being dangerous. NYX's laugh was like crystal chimes. "Reports can be incomplete," she said, moving closer, her scent reminiscent of night-blooming flowers. "Some experiences defy documentation." The other delegates watched from across the chamber, their expressions ranging from concern to fascination. Elias could hear their whispered warnings, but he remained focused on the twins. "Then perhaps," he said, meeting their intense gazes, "someone should write better reports." "Brave words," Lyra purred, her fingers trailing just inches from his shoulder, creating tingles along his skin without actually touching him. "But bravery and wisdom aren't always the same thing, though," NYX added, completing the circuit around him. "Sometimes the foolish choice proves wisest of all." The atmospheric lighting in the chamber shifted, responding to their combined emotional energies. Elias noticed patterns of deep purple and electric blue swirling around them, distinct from the softer colors elsewhere in the room. "Would you join us for the twilight meal?" they asked in unison, their invitation causing nearby Sinar to stop and stare. Dr. Vargas cleared his throat from several feet away. "Mr. Blackwood, the Earth delegation has a scheduled briefing." "The briefing can wait," Elias replied, not breaking eye contact with the twins. "I believe this falls under cultural exchange." Lyra's lips curved into a smile that held secrets. "Careful, Earthborn, some exchanges cannot be undone." "Better to embrace the unknown," he countered, "than live wondering what might have been." The twins exchanged another of their mysterious looks, but this time Elias caught a flash of their shared thought, approval, intrigue, and something more primal that made his pulse quicken. "Come then," they said, each offering a hand toward him. "Let us show you what your reports have missed." As Elias stepped forward to join them, he felt the weight of dozens of stairs, human and Sinar alike. He was breaking unspoken protocols, crossing invisible lines, but watching the way the twins moved, how their presence seemed to bend reality itself around them, he knew he'd made the right choice. Sometimes, the most meaningful paths were the ones everyone else was afraid to walk. One last warning, NYX whispered as they led him from the chamber. We are not what we seem. We are so much more, Lyra finished the thought. Elias smiled, feeling the electric potential of the moment. I'm counting on it. The doors closed behind them, leaving the whispers and warnings behind. Ahead lay mystery, danger, and possibility, everything he dreamed of finding among the stars. And as the twins guided him deeper into their world, their elegant fingers barely brushing his shoulders, Elias realized that his adventure was only beginning. The real question wasn't whether he'd survive their intensity, it was whether he'd ever want to leave it behind. The twilight meal took place in a chamber that seemed to float among the stars themselves. Transparent walls revealed Sinus and its 3 moons, their light creating an ethereal glow that played across the twins' azure skin. Most humans require more solid surroundings, Lyra observed as she guided Elias to a low cushion that seemed to be made of living crystal. Are you nervous? NYX's question carried a hint of challenge as she settled opposite him, her height still impressive even seated. Elias adjusted his position, aware of how the cushion responded to his emotions, shifting colors from deep blue to a warm amber. Nervous implies fear, he replied. I'm intrigued. Intrigued, they echoed in unison, sharing one of their mysterious smiles. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibility. A sphere of light materialized in the center of their small table, dissolving to reveal dishes that defied Earth physics, foods that moved with purpose, beverages that changed color based on the drinker's mood, crystalline structures that melted on the tongue like stardust. The first bite requires trust, Lyra explained, selecting what appeared to be a floating droplet of liquid silver. Everything meaningful does, Elias replied, maintaining eye contact as he accepted the morsel from her fingers. The sensation was extraordinary, flavors that expanded beyond taste into emotion, memories that weren't his own flickering at the edges of his consciousness. He caught glimpses of the twins as children, their unique bond already setting them apart from others of their kind. You see, NYX leaned forward, her iridescent eyes capturing the starlight, this is why others keep their distance. Once the sharing begins, it becomes difficult to maintain boundaries. Lyra finished, her voice carrying notes of both warning and invitation. Elias swallowed, feeling the lingering effects of the food enhancing his perceptions. Maybe some boundaries are meant to be crossed. Such dangerous thoughts, they responded together, but their approval radiated like warmth. As the meal progressed, their conversation deepened. The twins spoke of Sinar culture, of the delicate balance between their empathic abilities and the need for individual identity. Elias shared stories of Earth, of humanity's endless quest to reach the stars. Your species fears what it cannot control, NYX observed, her fingers trailing patterns in the air that left traces of light. Yet, you seem different, Lyra added, her movement creating complementary patterns that intertwined with her sisters. Maybe I understand something they don't, Elias said, watching the hypnotic dance of their light writing. That the most beautiful things in the universe can't be controlled, only experienced. The twins' patterns merged, forming a complex symbol that pulsed with meaning. He could almost grasp their pleased surprise that rippled through the air like perfume. Tomorrow, they said, their synchronization more pronounced with each passing moment, we perform the ritual of ascending light. Others will watch from the safety of the lower chambers, but you, NYX's eyes locked with his, might prefer a closer view. Much closer, Lyra confirmed, her gaze equally intense. The invitation was clear, as was the implied risk. Elias thought of the warnings, the protocols, the carefully maintained distances between species. Then, he thought of the stars he'd watched for so long, waiting for a chance at something real. I would be honored, he said simply. Their combined smile was like watching twin suns rise. Then our dance will have a new audience. As they escorted him back to his quarters, their presence surrounded him like a living aura. Other residents of the floating city saw them coming and quickly found alternate routes, their fear and fascination evident. At his door, the twins paused in perfect symmetry. "Until tomorrow, Earthborn," they said, their voices carrying harmonies that made his spine tingle. "Dream well," Lyra whispered. "Dream of us," NYX added with a knowing smile. Long after they'd glided away, Elias stood in his doorway, feeling the lingering traces of their energy. Tomorrow would bring the ritual, would bring him closer to whatever power had drawn him across the stars to this moment. His last thought before sleep claimed him was of their synchronized movements, their alien grace, and the way they looked at him, as if he were a puzzle they very much wanted to solve. In his dreams, he danced with starlight and tasted silver while twin moons watched with ancient, knowing eyes. The adventure he'd always wanted wasn't just beginning, it was transforming into something far more fascinating than he'd ever imagined. And somewhere in the floating city, two 8-foot twins prepared a dance that would change everything.